So dear all, welcome to this Cooperative Urban Futures first episode developed by Eutropian and the European Urban Knowledge Network. We're very happy to be with you. I'm Daniela Patti and my co-moderator here is Lily. Hi Lily.
Hi everybody. Nice to meet you. My name is Lily Maxwell and I'm Policy and Project Officer here at the European Urban Knowledge Network, otherwise known as the EUKN. The European Urban Knowledge Network is the only EU member state-driven network in the field of urban policy research and practice. And we are very excited to be here today with Daniela from Eutropian and a great lineup of speakers ready to get going.
So welcome all. So from ourselves, we're very happy. Some of you in the audience might have been following the series of webinars over the last months, and we've developed a new series of webinars that will be with you in the coming months that are dealing with the upcoming topics that our cities and our regions are facing at the moment. And this first episode is on circular economy, particularly looking into how to develop partnerships for local ecosystems. So how do stakeholders work together in developing circular economy strategies, whether these might be from public administration, private sector, NGO or research institutions. And we're extremely happy to have with us a very beautiful, may I say, panel of speakers with us who are experienced in circular economy from different institutions, from different perspectives, and different cities in Europe. So this will be very, very interesting, and we're looking forward also to knowing who in the audience is listening to us. Where are you from and what city are you based? So please let us know also if you're involved in circular economy projects yourself. Feel free to write in the Facebook chat, and your comments, as far as I know, will be popping up in the live, so everybody will be able to see them. Who's with us today? So we have Rossana Torre from the city of Milan. Hi, Rossana. Welcome, welcome. We have Johannes from Alchemia-nova in Austria. Hi, Johannes. Very welcome. We have Igor Kos from the Wcycle Institute in Maribor. Hi, Igor.
Hi.
We have Cátia Godinho from the Agrofloresta project, Bella Flor Respira project in Lisbon. Hi, Cátia.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Very welcome. And we have Cosima Malandrino from Paris. Hi, Cosima.
Hi.
From the LGI Sustainable Innovation. And then we have Janneke van Beek, who's a project officer in the European Commission, who is responsible for the Circular Cities and Regions initiatives. Hi, Janneke.
Good evening, everybody. Hi.
So very welcome. So we're very looking forward to the session of today, and we invite both our speakers and our audience that are following through Facebook to make as much use of the digital interactivity that is possible, seeing as we cannot meet in person for the moment. So feel free to write questions, chats, and so on. So how the session will work today is we will have some questions that we discussed with our panelists, but we will be having also a session at the end of the session of today. We will be together until 6:30, and hoping that our audience will be with us for the whole session to also discuss and comment the questions arriving from them. So, feel free to write all your comments and questions in the chat. They will not go unanswered. So at this point, I think what would be very interesting is to start really introducing our panelists and having a little bit more of an insight into what the work that they're doing. As we said, we're very happy to have panelists who are representing different types of institutions, whether it's public, private, research, or civic, very, very roughly saying. So we're really looking forward also to getting the perspective on how different types of stakeholders can be collaborating at local level, and also looking into what are the local differences depending on your country, depending on your specific city. So first of all, I would like to introduce Rossana Torre from the city of Milan. Hi, Rossana.
Hi, Daniela. Here I am.
Hi. So what we were wondering is, you're the project manager of the Reflow project in the city of Milan, amongst the many activities that you're running, and the city of Milan is investing into developing new circular economy strategies at local level, especially related, for example, a lot also on the food policy. So what we're wondering is, you're developing different types of pilots at local level. And can you tell us a little bit about how is it to work together with the different types of stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders you're involving, and how does the cooperation work in circular economy projects in your experience?
Yeah, thank you, Daniela. Happy to be here. And if I can, just want to sketch a little bit about Reflow project, which is an Horizon 2020 project, and is about co-creating circular and regenerative resource flows in cities. And we are about 30 partners, so a very huge partnership with countries from all Europe. And we have 6 pilots. And so with Milan are working Amsterdam, Paris, Berlin, Cluj-Napoca, Vejle, and each of the cities focus on one specific material flows. So, for example, Amsterdam is working on textile, wood, and Paris is working on wood coming from the big exposition in Paris. Then there is water, energy, plastic, and we are working on agri-food. And that's what, because we rely, as you said, on our food policies on the one side, and on the other side, we have also, we are working on a strategy for the redevelopment of our municipal markets, which are spread in the cities, and that are very interesting because they are at neighbor level, and we think that we can work a lot in an interesting way about agri-food flows passing through the cities, and where the municipal markets are the very interesting hubs for that. Starting from this view, we are involving a very diverse typology of stakeholders. So consider that we are working with big players such as the in-house company that is managing the wholesale general markets in Milan, then the private company that manage the waste service for Milan. Then we are working together with startups, innovative startups that are already working on material flows in a circular way, so on circular food topics. Then we have NGOs, for example, that are working on how to reduce food losses and how to redistribute fruit and vegetables that are discarded in these markets. So to say that we have a variety of stakeholders, and we are trying to work together with an approach that it's co-design, and let's say kind of processes of collective intelligence in which every stakeholder can bring different kind of knowledge and background. And that is very interesting for us because it's a kind of open innovation process led by the administration. And that is for now. So it's if you want, I can add something about the process, but maybe I'll let the space for later.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we can also discuss it at a later stage. And I think this is also interesting, Lily, because I think this also allows us also to connect up also with the other speakers and the other guests.
Yes. So Johannes, I'm going to move on to you next. You're working for Alchemia-nova, on the Direct Hubs project, which is a project that develops a concept for a sustainable circular urban food system that can eliminate waste and close resource cycles. We were wondering, can you tell us a bit more about what these hubs are and what they're doing and their innovative potential?
Hello and welcome from
Hi,
my
Johannes.
side. Hi. Hello. So the general idea of the Direct Hubs project is to engage citizens and people that live and work in these cities and engage with the neighborhoods basically, and think what type of resources can be metabolized or can be used directly on spot and converted into business cases. So it is all about so-called waste, if you want, or we prefer to use secondary resources, to call them secondary resources, how to make access to these and how to find also infrastructures to convert them. we basically work with 3 principles, which is like nature inspired, it's participatory, and it's circular. So yeah, in this project, we try to develop a methodology to find these entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, to find the people, the citizens, to work on these projects, to co-develop several of these types of projects that they want to work on. You imagine there can be glass in the city, there can be paper, there can be all sorts of stuff. And for this specific topic, now we have chosen food to work with, or water and nutrients, which is very closely connected to food production. We eat food, we digest, and we get rid of it by the known way, and to get access to these types and to directly convert it again to this power of the sun and then the power of these nutrients is the major key focus for now. So we do some material or resource flow analysis for Vienna, screen underutilized infrastructures together with the citizens. Underutilized infrastructure means, like, for imagine stores or buildings that are not properly used, and then engage people and like co-elaborate on how to actually make access to these new types of hubs that could evolve.
Sounds fascinating. And I think there's also a lot of crossover here with the work being done in Maribor and the Wcycle project with these new business models and involving kind of native creatives, so to speak. Daniela, I'll let you take over for to question.
Yeah, so hi, Igor, welcome from Maribor. You're representing the Wcycle Institute, which in short is an in-house company of the city of Maribor that is bringing in all the different in-house companies to implement a circular economy strategy. And it would be very interesting if you could tell us in short, how does the Wcycle Institute allow for the implementation of the circular economy strategy of the city of Maribor? For example, there was a lot of attention through Milan, and also what Johannes was saying about the food strategy, for example, with your Urban Soul for Food project. Can you tell us a little bit about how this governance model allows for the implementation of the circular economy strategy in projects like Urban Soul for Food?
Yes, thank you. In our case, we started development of the circular economy through involvement of utility companies. So we started from the public sector view, and the institute is direct consequence of these 5 companies coming together and establishing the new entity to kind of bring everybody at the same table. So what we at the beginning we looked at the material streams that were already mentioned that are on the daily basis produced in the city, and we are looking for solution how to use those material streams for the needs of the city. So in the Urban Soul for Food project, we kind of tapped into 2 material streams. One is the bio-waste and the second one is soil from the construction works in the city, and we combined those 2 through the technological process to produce fertile soil that is now used either for the green areas in the city or for the community gardens that we also in the Urban Soul for Food project established new gardens on 12,000 square meters here inside the city. So on the urban gardens, people can, of course, produce their own food. They are kind of supervised by NGO that handles this, different techniques of food production or gardening, and we supply the technical support through the soil and area that is available together with the city. So it's a kind of joint platform effort. We also developed the strategy that was spoken of, that was passed through the City Council in 2018. And behind the strategy, there is an action plan that we follow as much as possible with implementation. And this Urban Soul for Food project actually is part of the action plan. So how to use the material streams in the city for the purposes of the city.
Thank you, Igor. And actually, that's really what you're talking about with the circular kind of community gardens and projects is really related to something that Cátia Godinho in Portugal is working on. Cátia, you're working on the Agrofloresta project in Lisbon in the Bela Flor neighborhood, which was developed with the local community to create community gardens where people can learn to produce food and create circular economy cycles. Can you tell us a little bit more about this project and about the local partnerships that were sort of evolved through it?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. This project is more about raising awareness for people to understand that the food that we produce is produced very far away from where we consume it. So it's very important to make this distance shorter. And we want to create an emotional link with the food so people eat more real food and not so processed food. And that make the process more circular. And to do it, we try to implement in the middle of the city to use the small plots that the city already have, but they are kind of abandoned. They are not useful for anything. They are just there, especially the slopey parts. And we say, if nobody wants this part, okay, we want this part. So we will plant some food here, and we teach people how to plant, especially with a more regenerative technique. That is a new technique that is raising around the world that is called syntropic farming. That helps the different plants to work in a more natural way and to replicate the nature process. So we really want to show people how nature works, and that we don't have bad plants or good plants. We need to know what is the ecological functions of each one and use it at our favor and try to produce as much as food as we can where people live. And if people have this emotional connection, they will have better habits and they will have a much more awareness for circular economy, for food and for plastic and other materials and other streams. So something so simple as some cilantros or something that we can raise in our home. If you go to the supermarket, will come a bunch of it that maybe you don't use it all before they get rot, and also have some plastic around. So it's very important that people, just simple things like that, they can change their habits. And if you could do this connection is even better. And we start to do it in a social neighborhood. So we try to involve the community that sometimes don't have this old connection, but they are not so connected today, and sometimes they feel they don't belong to where they are and they don't have the same opportunities. So we want to capacitate these people so they can use these techniques and say, I know something that the other people don't know so well, so I can use my skills to do it. So we want to empower people with this process as well.
Thanks a lot, Cátia. That's an interesting. We're touring around Europe in the different cities and having a better understanding also what are the differences and what is happening in the different projects. A lot of these projects were related to food, and there is probably an engagement. And I think this is also something we can discuss together from a broader public in understanding, for example, circular economy when it comes to food. But actually, circular economy is absolutely not limited to food cycles, but on the contrary, we have to make sure that if we want the circular economy to become a new economic circular model, it also accesses different types of flows. Just as Rossana at the very beginning was explaining that in the Reflow projects, they're experimenting in pilots with different flows, exactly from textile to plastics. And this brings me on to Cosima. Hi, Cosima. We're flying over to Paris at this point. Hi. So you were telling us when we were preparing this call about this webinar, about the Housefull project that you're involved in, where you're working into actually innovative interventions for efficient management of material, of waste, of water and energy in the housing value chain, so related to housing, which is a little bit what also Igor was mentioning, more related to the construction. So there's a whole universe related to this. Can you tell us a little bit about what scenarios have you been developing within the Housefull project?
Of course, thank you for the invitation. And so, what's very interesting about Housefull, as you very well said in the introduction, Daniela, is that it really does tackle different sectors. You know, as you said, waste, water, energy, and materials, and it takes the housing sector as, let's say, the testing ground. It does so, and that, let's say, the other aspect, the other layer of interest of the project is that it does so by testing solutions in social housing buildings in different parts of Europe, and especially in the, let's say, in the outskirts of Barcelona in Spain, and both in Vienna and in the southeast of Austria. So there's these two elements that I find very interesting, like both the circular economy, so looking at the entire value chain throughout different sectors, and the fact that we're talking about a social housing buildings, and so socioeconomic contexts that are different in each city. So the project develops different solutions. They test these solutions in 4 buildings. Right now, we're going through a lab testing, and then these solutions are going to be applied to the real scenarios through retrofitting. And so, what are these solutions? I'm going to give a brief overview of what's going on. It's very complex teams and very complex technological solutions. So bear with me. So let's say there's the materials sector. So what the project is trying to do is going to share data about the materials that are used in the buildings under study, and what is their impact on the environmental both in a digital format to the stakeholders across the building's value chain, and it's gonna do so thanks to the material passports and building information modeling methodology. Then, as far as materials is concerned, there's also going to be a search of a sourcing of local building materials that's going to lead into a circular materials database that allows local actors to understand what are the materials that are available around them, so that they can use more sustainable materials instead of using the traditional ones. As far as the water sector is concerned, there's 2 different solutions, and they're both actually tested by Alchemia-nova, probably by a different member of your team, Johannes. It's the solution consists in using nature-based solutions, so wetlands, plants that filter water, so that gray water and black water can be filtered and reused in the same building. They can be reused for for gardening. They can also be reused for toilet flushing, for instance. Then there's solutions that tackle the waste stream. So these solutions, they use both black water and when I talk about black water, I mean, I don't know if I have to go into detail, but it's the water that comes out of toilets. They couple that waste with the bio waste, with the organic waste that we produce at home, They use an anaerobic digestion process. It means that they use bacteria to digest this waste without oxygen, and like that they produce biogas. So that biogas, so the project also develops a technology that allows to store that biogas, clean it so that it reaches the standard that can either go back, feed into the grid, or can be used directly for cooking in the same building, or for heating the building. Then finally, there's solutions related to energy efficiency. So these are more, let's say, traditional solutions of retrofitting using efficient facades and roofs, so that the energy is kept inside of the building. So I gave a brief overview. I'm sorry if it was overly technical or if it was hard to understand, but yeah, I can talk a little bit about what are the implications of these technologies later on.
Thanks, Cosima. And now I'm going to ask a few questions to Janneke van Veen. And Janneke's sort of the odd one out in our lineup because she's working for the European Commission, the DG Research and Innovation. And this webinar is maybe becoming inadvertently a pitching competition because Johannes is currently setting up the Circular Regions and Cities Initiative and setting up a special dedicated office which will help cities in their circular transition. So, Janneke, sort of in relation to what we've already heard, but how can you tell us a little bit more about the sort of tools and programs that the Commission's putting forward to support cities on the ground in their circular transition going forward?
Thank you, Lilian. Thank you for having me. Well, there is a lot going on. The European Commission, as you probably all are aware of, really acknowledges the crucial role of cities and regions in the transition to a circular economy. I mean, it's mentioned in the Circular Economy Action Plan that was published in 2020 in the chapter on making circularity work for people, regions, and cities. So if you ask me, can I tell you something about the different tools, programs, and initiatives? I think I can talk on for another hour, and I don't think anybody wants to listen to that for another hour. But yeah, looking at the programs and initiatives, it all depends on which stage of development you are on a local or regional level. I mean, you can be in a very early stage where you're really, looking to see how you can engage more in becoming circular, or you can be in a very mature stage where you have very specific needs, for example, to find financing. So yeah, I could split it up in engagement, partnership forming, demonstration projects, and actual deployment. So within the European Commission, there are a lot of different DGs who are all having their own, instruments and tools. For example, DG Environment has started the Green City Accord, which is a movement of European mayors that commit to make cities cleaner and healthier. And by signing an accord, they commit to address certain areas such as circular economy. You have DG Regio, who have the European Urban Initiative, and they want to strengthen integrated and participatory approaches to sustainable urban development. I mean, you can find this all in the Circular Economy Action Plan if you're interested. You also have, for example, DG Grow, that supports cities in using cutting-edge technologies to lead the intelligent, green, and socially responsible recovery, basically creating new jobs and strengthening citizen participation and well-being. So I am not as practical as all the speakers before me, but there are a lot of programs that really want to reach out to cities and regions who are doing like great on the ground work, which is so necessary. And yeah, listening to what I've just heard, and also my introduction by Lily, yeah, I am coordinating at this moment the Circular Cities and Regions Initiative, which is also mentioned in the Circular Economy Action Plan of 2020. And this initiative is part of Horizon Europe, which is Europe's research framework program. And this initiative aims at implementing circular solutions at local and regional scale, and helps to deliver on the European Green Deal. And instead of really focusing on technologies or individual companies or products, our aim is to focus on systems and on value chains. So we really want to, broaden the scope. We want to look beyond the traditional resource recovery in waste and water sectors, but we really want to look at the whole chain, like designing out waste and pollution, keeping products and materials in use, regenerate natural systems, etc. And we want to look at consortia of regional authorities, industries, NGOs, citizens, etc. And we really want to, give financial and technical support to demonstration projects. So projects that are already quite mature, but we also want to reach out to cities and regions who are starting to look at how can we make this transformation so that they can find all the necessary information and help. So yeah, that was in a nutshell of what the European Commission is doing.
So thanks a lot, Janneke. I think this shows our how diverse our panelists are, but I think it's very interesting also to have this first round closing with Janneke, because this is really what is interesting, is the fact that all the pilots and all the different stakeholders working in the ground then need also to have a sort of platform support that is putting in a as much as possible a cohesive strategy also at European level. So I think it's very interesting that, just as they said, not all of them, but many of our guests today are involved somehow in European projects. So this is also an opportunity to understand a little bit better how all these different projects and different segments fit into an overall strategy. So thanks a lot. I would also like to thank all our guests, because I know it's really difficult to tell in a couple of minutes all the work that you're doing all day, every week, and with a lot of passion and commitment. So we really appreciate this. So to give also a bit of variety to our guests and from the audience. And in fact, coming back to our audience, feel free to send us comments also on what was said by our guests. If you would like to have further information or you would like to address questions, because we will have now a second round of comments and impressions from our guests, but then we're opening the floor to questions from the audience. So start preparing yourself, send them in, because we're all really looking forward to knowing more about what is being said, because we had also some comments from some of the people that are following us. This is the beautiful added value of the digital, that we're having people following us from Romania, from Oslo, from Vienna. So we're also looking forward. We know there's more people also following, so feel free to just say hello to our guests and let us know where you're following from. This said, I think I would start one of the questions now, that the second round of questions and impressions from our guests, is to start understanding a little bit with a constructive approach, because in times of COVID we need a bit of positivity. What are the challenges that we're facing ahead, and how can we overcome them? And one of the things I would like to ask Rossana, because this is something that the city of Milan is working particularly, as a city administration, is working particularly on the engagement of citizens. How do you think citizens can be actually engaged within circular economy projects in order for them to understand? As we saw from Cosima, sometimes these projects have a strong technical dimension, which might not be very, very fun and very attractive as such, but it can have immense benefits to your daily life. So from your perspective and your experience at the moment, how is it possible to engage citizens?
Yes, Daniela, I would like to start with a kind of concrete example to give you an idea about how we are exploring also the issue of citizen engagement. And I will start to tell you something about one of our project scenarios within Reflow, which is called Milano Prima Seconda. Is connected to the idea that to explore how some unwanted materials, waste, can be recycled and inject back into the economy as secondary raw materials. That is something that other colleagues are told about in the previous speech. And we are working on that in particular, starting from a kind of digital platform open source, which is a kind of technological infrastructure that we have in common with the other pilot cities working in Reflow. And here the idea is, for example, to give the opportunity to different kind of, let's say, economic actors, and inside these categories, we put also citizens, because we see citizens as active actors in this economic loop that we want to recreate. And for example, this platform could be a place where different kind of materials, we are testing now for agri-food, but different kind of materials could be mapped and traced, and for example, exchange, giving value to new products that could be created. Because just to give an example, we are working on a specific case studies, which is a startups called Hybrida Beer, that is making beer from the unsold bread. And they are collecting bread at neighbor level. They are bringing that bread in a brewery, and this brewery is producing beer that it's customized for neighbors, for example. It's interesting also for citizens, because can create some dynamics, for example, in which also citizens could be provider of kind of materials. And maybe tomorrow, if this platform will be kind of successful, they could be also provider of different kind of materials that can be traced into the cities and provided to other economic actors that can use those materials to upcycle, and so to give new value, to produce new products with an added values. And that's one way to imagine also citizens within this kind of loop, and not only as consumers, for example, of circular products or circular foods. Another way that it's another example that we are working on, which is more, let's say, analogic but very interesting, is related to this NGO which collect in the general market of Milan the fruit and veg that are discarded from the sailors, and so they bring these goods, they sort, and they take the part that is edible, and they redistribute to NGOs, but also to citizens. In this case, when they work in the weekly market, for example, that are market open air, they involve directly the citizens to make this kind of sorting activities that it's very time consuming. And that is very interesting, because the dynamics is that citizens, for example, those that are more in poverty and that are used to go into the markets to pick up by themselves fruit and vegetables, in this case, they become part of the process. And so this is kind of way to restoring also dignity to this act. And this is another way in which there is a kind of closing the loop, also involving the citizens in the process. And this is another way to do that.
Thank you, Rossana.
Of course, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, just to finish, of course, the COVID for us, for the project and for the activities that we was planning is a kind of challenge, but yeah, we hope that in the last part of our project implementation, it could be more easy to do also kind of tests and activities with citizens.
Thank you, Rossana. I think you really highlight as well how, you know, the circular economy is something that really produces new growth and new jobs. And it's not something that is going to necessarily take away from current economic development, which often it's criticized for doing. And so I think you also talked about how kind of local people are being made into or made into entrepreneurs, for example, via circular economy approaches. Johannes, you're also working on this with the Direct Hubs project. Can you tell us about any kind of barriers that you've had to overcome with this project, and how you've managed to involve different kinds of local stakeholders in entrepreneurship around the circular economy?
Yeah, the Direct Hubs project just started like more or less recently. So we are currently collecting all the stakeholders. We have contacted only a few, like the most important ones. And we believe that the stakeholder engagement will not be the major barrier. I think we will find like-minded people and people that want to strengthen their social muscles and want to go out and then do something and really engage. Especially now during Corona times, at the neighborhood level, it would be is something very suitable, I believe, as well. But other than that, we have changed many barriers in all these circular economy projects that we're working on, which is now we just want to extrapolate the methodology that we, for example, developed for the Housefull project and see how others would like to take them on. For the Housefull project, for example, we wanted to engage with neighbors, which was quite successful. And they were all super interested in wanting information and join our workshops and things. And we also worked with refugees in upcycling workshops, and they were super happy to be able to see how old furniture can be turned into something new. And they're all great disseminators going across wherever they go next and see how this goes. But now, for example, if we want to collect just compost or like organic waste from at neighborhood level, it is officially not allowed. You become waste manager, and you would need to go through all the bureaucracy that is needed. Just if you collect 2 kilograms of compost, so it is something. Now it's just internally we bring because we digest a lot, and we bring it. The co-workers bring it with them, but even like next door, we're not allowed to tap into that, not yet. They need a big series of documentation. Also, when we do a circular building project, what the Housefull is all about, and we search for secondary building materials, it is a very tiring process. I mean, it is very easy, let's say, if you want to do it privately without anybody else knowing about it, then you can just buy the bricks and do the secondary and do it. But if you want to do it officially and get the permit and get the stamps, the architects is like the first barrier. There are very, very few architects that think about this concept. They all design their dream building with the zero energy, blah, blah, what is very common already, thick styrofoam insulation panels. That's the standard. You cannot get better than that. And in the end, then everything needs to change several times because you cannot find these materials in the secondary market. I mean, styrofoam is anyway a no-go, but then you know the poles that you find, the wood part, the whatever, the crushed concrete, everything is like different once you are on the site, and then it is very difficult to work like live with the new materials and new changing deviations all the time from thickness of these, not being able to calculate U values properly. And there is like a whole series of things that need to change that these can really be enabled despite the stock and this digitalization that would help a lot even for just planning a building. There's a lot of legal things, many more, but I think these are the two most interesting ones for now.
Thanks, Johannes. I think that what is very interesting about what you're saying, and I could see Janneke was also smiling, because I can imagine also from the perspective of the European Commission, the administrative barriers that you were highlighting, because the bureaucratic process was designed in a time when you were not planning on the circularity of materials. So actually, this is one of the barriers that we're overcoming now. And I think this would be also interesting also to hear later in the discussion and the debate also what's the impression also from the other stakeholders. And in the meantime, I see that we're getting also some questions from the audience. So I hope this is also inspiration for the others who are listening to us today to not be shy and feel free to write in, because the questions are automatically shared with our guests. This also brings us also to start a little bit about, what is the role of the administration, on the one hand, definitely to try to overcome some of the administrative barriers that Johannes was just mentioning, but also to facilitate processes on the longer term. I connect up also to what we were saying before, because Janneke was explaining how the European Commission obviously has a strategy, is allocating funds to support piloting and innovative solutions, and many of the projects of today are supported in some way from the European Commission to implement innovations, but I think it's also very interesting that not all of them are. So I think it's also interesting that some of the other projects are more autonomous. So I think the long-term sustainability would be maybe possibly not as much an issue for them, or maybe yes. I'm curious to know their impression, because one of the things that happens in general with European projects, but when we're talking about the transition of an economic model, this is obviously goes in contradiction, is European projects have a limited amount of time. Usually it's approximately 3 years with an allocated budget and a set clear of activities that are being implemented. Then the project is over. And how do we ensure that there is long-term impact after the end of the formal end of the project, so that the initiative continues on the long terms? And we believe that the involvement and the engagement of the stakeholders is an opportunity, because maybe in a circular economy opportunity, the stakeholders will be committed to the initiatives at local level, not only because of ethical and passion towards environmental issues, but also because possibly they see also an economic advantage in implemented project at local level. And this is what I would like to ask Igor, because we know one another through the Urban Soul for Food project, and which is coming to an end. And I'd like to understand a little bit more from you. How do you imagine that some of the activities, or how does the city of Maribor and the partnership in the project enable the long-term sustainability of the activities that you developed also after the end of the project? And how do you think that some of the barriers of the end of the funding of the subsidies of the activities can be overcome through very specific actions?
Yes, well, this is a challenge that is common to, I think, all of European projects. We thought about it before we started. So when we were applying for the UEA program, we already kind of envisioned how things will be afterwards. So, for example, this technical assembly that produces the fertile soil will be used by the waste management company that is also in maintenance of the green areas in the city. So, but also based on that, we will try to develop the business model for the whole material stream of the bio-waste. So this is not something that we will stop, but we will try to upgrade it for the whole material streams, because we are now using kind of between 3 to 5% of the material stream for these pilots. And if everything proves to be like we know already it will be, then this is the case for the upgrade to the bigger equipment to kind of maintain the whole circle all the time that is produced in the city. On the other hand, we developed also an application that connects consumers and producers of the food here locally, that was already kind of taken notice and used by other municipalities in Slovenia. So this is, from that point of view, already a business case somehow. A lot of local farmers use this COVID period to kind of go digital with their possibilities of supply. So this tool was really good accepted, and some of the municipalities around Maribor actually recommended to their citizens, either on the producer or the consumer side, to use it to connect directly, and it will further develop. So we just go from the web page now into the mobile app, so it will be available, I hope, in 2 months' time, also as a mobile app. On the other hand, from the governance point of view and for continuous activities, we are fortunate enough to be part of the project that is led by a municipality of Milan. In the DEAR program, it's called Food Wave, where we are raising awareness of the youth in the city about the local food production, local food consumption, seasonal consumption, and food waste. So we are trying also to build on the experience of the previous projects when we apply to the new ones. So that theme of the food, for example, continues through the food wave project. The business case from the Urban Soul for Food will continue to build for the waste management company, and through that we are trying to ensure that everything goes as much as possible into day-to-day activities. So the companies that are involved will grow, and of course the gardens will stay. People are actually lining up if the plot is empty, so somebody decided I don't want to garden anymore. There are 2, 3, 5 people already behind in the line, so they can actually take the plot and start working. And what we are hoping is that municipality will also use some other plots that are available in the city and are usable for this kind of activities to create new public gardens that more people can actually grow their food. When we were preparing the project, we were able to choose the site out of 5 possible locations. So we decided on this one because it has the best possibilities in our view how we can implement the project, but that means also that 4 of the sites were left untouched, and they are as it stands right now still untouched, and they can be used. So municipality has now the numbers, so they know exactly how much it costs to prepare the plot for this kind of activities. It's not too much money regarding the city budget, so it's doable, and they have additional areas where they can do it. Especially we are focusing on the areas where is high density of the people living together, so they don't have their own possibilities of gardens. Maybe they can do it on the balconies, but that's not enough, to kind of really do it. So this is something that we are looking forward to kind of promote and build on the results of the project.
Thanks, Igor. I think it's interesting as well to have that possibility to upscale and develop the project as you go forward into making it something bigger and maybe more systemic at the city level. And Cátia, your project is sort of similar. You were saying that you look out for the odd plot here and there and you go where you can. From your perspective, I was wondering how you see the kind of upscaling and development of this project as a community project. And in relation to that, what is its potential in terms of pursuing social cohesion in the long term?
Yeah, so I really relate to what Igor was saying. But in our case, we really think that these kind of projects can be a showroom so another people can replicate it. So we want to train people so they can replicate in different parts of the city and in different parts of Portugal or wherever in the world. And we receive a lot of people in this poor neighborhood that are outside from the neighborhood. They never really visit these kind of neighborhoods, and sometimes they are afraid because it's stigmatized neighborhoods. So this opens the frontiers to these neighborhoods and to these places that usually are not so touristic. So it's nice to have these frontiers to be more smooth, and people that lives there drink from the experiences of the people that come from outside. So you have exchanging knowledge between people from the neighborhood and people from outside, and they become more cohesive. And also because all these projects you make, if you connect people, regular people that just live there, normal citizens, but also different institutions, we need to do partnerships and we need to feed all of this so everything can run. And when people have strong connections between them, even if they are from institutions or they are normal citizens, circular economy happens in a natural way, in an organic way, because people swap things between themselves. They don't need a big system around it. They just change, you know, the clothes with the kids. They give food from to each other, and there is a lot of things happening in a very organic way. So we need to strengthen this community and neighborhood connections, and that's what we try to do at the same time. It's more about this.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Cátia. I think it's interesting that as we're looking into what are the barriers and what are the challenges that circular economy projects face, I think a lot of issues, from the social dimension to the civic engagement to the technical issues to the administrative issues, are coming up. And so for Cosima, I have a really easy question at this point. Actually, Cosima, can you tell us a little bit about from your perspective? We're talking about all these different pilots, and many of the barriers and many of the challenges were mentioned. Do you think there are some other challenges that are maybe missing, for example, from the perspective maybe of enterprises, or from your perspective in the pilots that you've been developing in the Housefull projects? What other barriers have you come across?
Yeah, so
another question.
I mean, I've actually found very interesting all the intervention before me, and I recognize myself and the Housefull project in all the challenges that were mentioned previously. So I would say that from let's say an enterprise point of view, and in general in the whole value chain, the Housefull project is especially interesting because the housing value chain includes many different professions. So I think Johannes mentioned it before. You know, we're talking about designers, we're talking about architects, we're also talking about construction companies that have to deal with the waste at the end of a demolition phase. So, you know, there's all these different actors that are, you know, that have to get together and have to work towards a circular transition. And you can very well imagine that how hard it is for all these actors to come together and actually work towards switching to circular practices. So I would say, Johannes mentioned it earlier, regulations and administrative barriers are, you know, one of the main challenges for these actors, because it means that, you know, using different materials, using secondary raw materials that have been, you know, salvaged from other buildings or salvaged from other sources, it's often not considered safe. It doesn't have a quality stamp from the government or from the local authority. It, you know, just very practically, you cannot use it in a building, in retrofitting a building or constructing a new one. So there's really a lag in between what the innovations are trying to do and what the actual regulatory framework is, you know, tells you to do. This is also the case not only for materials, but it's also the case, you know, for waste management and water reuse. Water reuse policies are also problematic in the sense that often, in the case of Austria, the partners from the projects were telling us that if you want to reuse the water from they're producing, you have to ask for a special permit. So you know it entails a set of administrative barriers. In Spain, the regulatory framework it's still kind of lagging behind, so you know it's hard to actually introduce these innovations to the market. So these are the barriers that the actors, the partners, the companies that are part of Housefull are facing. I would also say that there's if you want to be very straightforward, there's a huge economic and cost barrier in the sense that these innovations often cost a lot of money. and so you can very well develop a technology that treats your waste, treats your water, produces biogas, but then who's going to bear the cost of financing that innovation, or financing that capital investment, especially when we're talking about, just as a reminder, we're talking about in Housefull, we're talking about social housing projects. So there's a whole nother layer of let's say challenges, because social housing policies have been struggling especially in Southern European countries. It's not the case in Austria, but it's in the case in Spain. There's less and less of budget dedicated to these projects. So when you're trying to develop a social housing project, maybe putting a technology that reuses water and transforms wastewater into biogas is not the priority. So in this case, subsidies, the state, some types of programs need to come in to cover that cost. And I found actually very interesting that what Rossana was saying on the collaboration of actors at the city level, because I think one of the key drivers for Housefull is what we found is that in order to surpass this barrier of investment of cost structure, the fact that actors collaborate at the city level, they each use resources and waste produced by each of them and turn them into resources. That could be a solution to overcome this. Maybe I can end by also saying that there's another barrier is the fact that for some of these enterprises, of these innovations, they put into a market something that has never been done before. And so you set up a biogas, you set up a waste management, you set up an energy innovation into a building, but then who is going to deal with it? Who is going to manage it? So we're also lacking from the entrepreneurship and enterprise point of view. We're lacking the whole maintenance value chain. So in a building, like, who is going to take care of that innovation that you financed through a European project in 5 years? If there's no company, just very practically, there's no company maintaining a biogas pilot, or a waste management technology at the building level. There's no skills at the local level, so this technology can be the best that you developed. It can be very efficient. It can be very super environmentally friendly. But then, if no one knows how to deal with it, no one knows how to manage it in the long term, it becomes an issue. Sorry, I'm starting to ramble, but I'll stop here.
No, that was great. Thanks, Cosima. I think it's really interesting because, as Danny also highlighted, a lot of you are kind of bringing up these issues that come into play when you're trying to bring about new systems in an old anachronistic system that's not catered towards actually what you're doing, both from a legal perspective and a practical kind of market side perspective. And Janneke, I'm going to turn to you now. I know you're not solely responsible for the EU's frameworks on the circular economy, but I was wondering what you thought about how cities and regions can best take advantage of initiatives like the Circular Regions and Cities Initiative, and especially in light of those regions and cities that maybe are not so far along their circular journey or don't fit into a traditional idea of what the kind of circular innovation is from a high-tech perspective. We've had a question from an audience member who's saying, we're talking about very innovative cities at the forefront of circular innovation, Giovanni Pagano, but what about towns and maybe more rural areas that might still have many circular processes in place, but don't necessarily have kind of the modernization of new circular flows, shall we say. So I'm wondering how the kind of diversity of Europe's cities, how can they take advantage of the Commission's tools and programs like the one you're working on?
All right, thank you. Well, I heard a lot of very interesting comments, things that I've also within the Commission, well, the Commission in itself is working on, but I also know that several member states are doing a lot of work, for example, on legislation hampering innovation. And before I go into the question you just asked, Lily, I know that, for example, in Flanders, Belgium, and in the Netherlands, they have a project or it's like an initiative called Green Deals. So not the European Green Deal, but like in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands and Flanders, called Green Deals, where different stakeholders sit together to kind of discuss legislation that is hampering innovation. And often, because different parties are sitting together, they actually see, okay, it's not as such legislation, but it's really like, how do you interpret legislation, and how can we, for example, interpret it or ease legislation in such a way that the innovations are happening or possible. But I saw there was somebody from Amsterdam who maybe could say a little bit more about that. Now, in relation to the initiative that I am working on, there are going to be three streams in which both cities and regions can benefit. One is really, and again, you know, we're on the verge of setting up the whole initiative. So I hope this summer we'll be up and running, and the initiative will be run by a coordination and support office. We love to use the jargon. I'm sorry, Daniela. Yeah, so this office really is going to select 10 pilot projects that are quite far advanced in their circular solutions, and we then want to basically help them, making sure that, you know, the issues that they're facing, that they get the correct help they need to make sure that it's going to be a success, that it's going to be deployed, that it's not just going to, you know, remain a project that will end as soon as the money is run out, but that it's actually going to be a success and that it can be upmarketed. And that's not just like, you know, focusing on legislation, but it's or technologies, but it's also about, you know, how can you write a business plan that actually, you know, you get finance, because that's a huge issue as well that Cosima also mentioned. Like, how can you get the finance? Because a lot of financial institutions don't really understand what circular economy is. They're focusing on the risks, but not looking at the risks, for example, for a linear economy. But that's something else that the Commission is working on at the moment. So basically, the CCRI will be, you know, working with 10 pilot projects, looking at different issues that they're encountering, and there's going to be a very extensive website. There are going to be webinars, there are going to be conferences, trying to really get the knowledge that we are gathering there, and, you know, looking at all the problems, but also the opportunities and the drivers that these pilot projects find, that we can actually, you know, share this knowledge with everybody out there that wants to move towards a circular economy. Also, these cities and regions that are, you know, beginning to move towards this shift. And an additional comment to that is, often it's not so much, you know, that you put the money into it, or, you know, it's really often that you need one or two people who are really like the drivers behind this project. I mean, I've seen that time and time again. Like, you need a group of people who are really committed and who really want to go for it, and also the political engagement, local politicians, or, you know, that engage to make that change. Anyway, I'm rambling as well, I'm sorry. What I also really want to focus your attention on is that next week the Horizon Europe will publish its work program. So if you're interested in, you know, submitting a proposal, really keep a close eye, because next week the work program will be submitted, and there will be 3 projects that will really deal with what you guys are working on, which is really, you know, making circular economy happen on cities and a regions initiative. And 2 of these projects will be on, you know, for 2021 and 2022, which will be offering project development assistance to these initiatives, be it from technical, legal, or financial assistance, to help move from a demonstration project to really deployment. And the other is also a project for 2021, which we call demonstration projects, in which you also get funding or a grant to make sure that the proposal you have gets the money to make sure that you can move forward. So next week, a big week to see if you want to apply. And over the summer, please also keep an eye out on when we're going to launch an expression of interest for pilots, cities and regions who really want to become a pilot. And also there you will get assistance in deployment of your project. So thanks.
Well, thanks, Janneke. There you go. So some insider information from the European Commission. So I hope that both our guests and also our audience will be definitely keeping an eye on the website of the European Commission for the opportunities that are available. But also, I think what was very interesting about what Janneke was saying is also relating and putting into a system the different comments that were coming, and also it's very good to see how the European Commission is aware of all of this in the different parts, so not only Janneke and her department, but also the colleagues from this very big machine that is a public administration of the European Commission. We have some very interesting questions from the audience. Before we going into that, I think there are also some comments between our guests, so feel free also to comment to one another. I believe Rossana had something she wanted to share.
Just one. Then I saw a very nice question for me, but just a comment to react also to talking about barriers, because I would be curious to hear from my colleagues, the other participants, because we are facing another big barriers, which is connected to data. And data is critical in the circular economy, because it's, let's say, also one of the bases on which we can build circular solution and so on, based on technologies and so on and so forth. And so I have the idea, for example, that in cities like Milan, that it's yes, innovative in some ways, but data, we don't know very well the flows related to our goods. It's very, very critical and difficult to map the flows. And the huge part of the project in the first phase was dedicated to this challenge, because we start trying to become more aware about the agri-food flows passing in the cities. And that's of course very complex, but the fact is that it's very difficult to find the data and to build the data. And okay, I don't want to be boring on that, but I would be curious to hear from the others, because for us that was a very critical barrier, and we are thinking about that. For example, we are trying to map the flows with these also, let's say, innovative tools like Sankey diagrams, considering specific flows of agri-food and see all the nodes of this chain to understand better where are the gaps. But sometimes you need very, very granular data about that, and you miss. And that's a problem, and maybe it's also related to the culture of data that we have or that we don't have. And no, was just a consideration, reacting also about the theme of barrier.
Thanks, Rossana. So open mic, who would like to comment on that?
We have actually we try to develop these resource flow analysis for Vienna now. And we see that the granularity is key, especially if you're focusing on the city and don't have it like on a national level. And we work with Prodcom statistics and waste statistics, basically. These are easily accessible. And then, unfortunately, you would need, at certain points of processing, you would need to look into data of processing companies that like work through these. That's where the most critical thing is. They usually don't want to cooperate. Not some of them, yes, but not all of them. And then there's the transparency of data. So, and then of course, if somebody, a food processing company, for example, They don't even want to look into the books, even if you don't name them by name. They don't want. They say that it is obvious that it is us because these are the massive flows that we produce the supermarket chains and then things, and then you see how much they throw away. And but there's it is critical, but I think we don't. There is no workaround. We need to. There needs to be a big cooperation, and I think this needs to be top-down decision. Otherwise, otherwise it will not really. It will not really, capture the thing. And this is also what we did in this resource flow analysis that we have done so far. Is we assume, we make assumptions. We have some data here and some data here, and then we make assumptions on like the flows in between. But even if you are 10% like out of the scope of what is the range, you still have a final thumb-sucking number, which is a good guesstimate, and then you can like our vision that we had for open governance is to really see live where the city stands and how can it move further. That with every single action they do, how this impact and how these resource flow changes directly. So this could be a very interesting aspect, also considering these tools that are now available. Yeah, I think for future we can definitely reference to that. If you want to, we can do an exchange and work with our data Sherpas. Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. I already see there a nice collaboration possibly starting up. So we're happy to see that. I don't know if there's any additional comments coming from anybody else in relation to also what Rossana was saying, because I would also give space also to sharing also some of the questions from our audience. And I think I would read some of them and then have an open floor for commenting from any of you. So I think one of the questions that came up was that, for example, one is in terms, and this was also what Janneke was also mentioning, is we're having projects that are piloting some very innovative solutions, for example, in terms of waste management and so on. But how do we ensure that these pilots are not somehow just some showcases, but are actually pushing for other cities around Europe to be improving their systems? And I think this also relates also to what a comment that came from Giovanni Pagano. So this was the question from Theodor Frolu, sorry, so from Romania, but there was also a question from Giovanni Pagano about we're talking about, you know, all the speakers here are coming from very innovative cities from different regions of Europe. What happens when smaller municipalities that might not be at the front runners in innovation and possibly might not have the same access to financial resources to experiment, a little bit like Cosima would say was saying. I think for the moment I would do a round of impressions and comments, and then I think we also have some specific questions to some of our speakers. But in the meantime, I would like to have with these two questions coming from Giovanni and from Theodor, I would like to have a first round of impressions from our speakers. Open mic.
Okay, I can start, and I will just comment first on the data. This, when we developed the strategy and the action plan, this was one of the key projects that we identified for the future, because the lack of data to kind of, you know, see what is going on. So we were able to access data on the city level to the companies that actually were managed by the municipality. But the problem is, as Johannes said, on the second level, when you go to the national government, because then everything comes from in the same pot, and you cannot extract the information regarding to your city or the region out of that quite easily. And it's a challenge, and we are trying to solve it, but we were aware of this right at the beginning. Regarding the other questions that were posted on Facebook, of course, it's a challenge, you know, to go from the pilot to the real kind of day-to-day operation, and this is something that we will face in the close future with the closing of the Urban Solve for Food project. But as I mentioned, we started thinking about it in advance, so we kind of know exactly what we were up to, and with these pilots, we are basically walking the thin line, on the legal barriers, because it's not 100%. We call it the gray area, when we are trying to mix something that is basically not foreseen in the legal framework that could be done, and we are trying also to kind of find these areas where we can legally do that with all the permissions. For example, we are doing another project here, demonstration in Horizon 2020 with the construction waste. We are building a building, and to get a permit for building with this kind of materials, as what it was mentioned already, it's not so easy as it looks. It's a simple building, it's a one-story building, but still, because you are using used materials and you are transforming them into new materials, it's a kind of complicated, we are lucky enough to have National Institute for Materials certifying these new materials, so-called, and they are guaranteeing that this is then legal material again. But we had to go through all this process of certification to be able to do something as simple as one-story building. And there was a question about, can you show it, please, for the garden? So I do one round and then I'm off. Yes, we are guaranteeing the long term, as long as the plot people who are using plots are fulfilling the basic engagement. So they are actually working on the plot. They are not causing any trouble to other plots or stealing goods from other plots. They will be able to keep the plots operational for the duration of project. They will not pay anything afterwards. They will pay a small amount just to cover the basic costs for the water, which is separately collected. But with the gardening, you sometimes need also fresh water, which is available on the plot. We have several other areas in the city that are already in the long term. Let's say my parents have their garden in one of those plots for 15 years, and there is not a problem. So as long as the occupants are doing what they contractually said they will do, they will stay on the plots. So this is the policy here, and we will not change this policy, hopefully. And this is from my side for all questions.
Thanks, Igor. Are there any additional comments or questions from the others in the panel?
May I maybe answer to a question coming from
Yes.
Yeah, because it's very nice and give the opportunity to me to. The question is, how do traditional food markets need to be redesigned to better accommodate circular food flows? It's only an organizational challenge or also a spatial and physical design question? It's very nice because it's difficult to start from the space, because you have to imagine, for example, these places in Milan are very old and traditional, but sometimes also with problem of decays. And as you can imagine, it's an asset that it's owned and managed by the municipality. But the municipality start a kind of strategies also to innovate the governance of these places, and so asking to operators to aggregate in consortia that can manage the wool markets. And so in the new tender that we are publishing, we are asking also to propose a kind of innovative and circular perspective to this consortium that are interesting to manage the markets. But again, I'm convinced that there is also an interesting dimension related to the space and the characteristics of the space. But when you can't start from that, because you have to adapt, for example, the experiment and the circular solution to spaces that are old and with decay. You can work, for example, as we are doing on let's say kind of a technological solution that are not isolated from the space, but can, for example, allow to make some check-in and check-out processes of the goods, that it's closely related to the challenging of data. For example, try to make more efficient some the management of the flows that are passing through these markets. At the same time, these markets in the strategies of Milan would become more and more some hybrid places. So we expect that those places could be in the future places where you can buy food, but also do other kind of activities, again, involving different kind of stakeholders that, for example, need spaces inside the markets to make activities on awareness about circularity and foods and so on. So the idea is that, right, we can't maybe at the moment directly go on the spatial dimension to redesign and replan, but that dimension is very important and can have a dialogue with the technological solution and the more virtual solution that we are trying to test and to prototype.
I believe we had a question also from the audience to Johannes, which I think will appear on the screen as well. So Johannes, what's your answer to that?
Yeah, these special circular zones. Of course, this is one approach that I really like. I like dedicating an area where people can feel free to do and try whatever they want on circular economy. This would be a great opportunity, and if a city dares to do something like that, it is already a big leap forwards. That's in addition with this Dutch Green Deal proposition, which I actually recommend for many years now. But of course, it is like the brains of Central Europe or even Southern Europe are not so far like the Netherlands or so, where they have this mentality already for many years. It is difficult. There could be other tools as well, like front runners, giving front runners the chance to increase the impact, and this could also tap into one of the other questions, that giving them the possibilities. Now we as researchers, we are only relying on Horizon Europe funding or something, tenders or something like that. But if we the same is true for other organizations. If there's not a municipality or so interested in these cutting edge crazy things like turning shit into food, it will never be realized. Yeah, I can talk much more about that, but I think it is answered. So circular zones, yes, wherever possible. Regions, we try to involve many more, rural areas, and people love that idea. But you need the money and the okay for doing so.
Thanks, Johannes. And I could see Yannick nodding, so I guess that's quite connected also to what work she's coordinating. I would like to ask, we're running towards the closing, it's the last couple of minutes, but I would like to ask Cátia, Cosima and Yannick for some last remarks and comments. So Cátia, I believe you had some challenges you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of things that were touched here, and I would like to add just two things that I realize that are problems sometimes to implement circular economy, and some other project as well. One is the continuity of the project. Sometimes, as you said, the projects take like 3 years, and when we are ready and we already know more or less how we do it, we try to implement these innovative projects, but then we don't have time to really to really make improvements in the business model. So we lack of this time, and I think it's something that we don't usually have, and is more or less easy to solve, is to have financing to give continuity to these projects. Don't make new projects all over again all the time, but also to pick the better projects and give some financing to improve them and to make them a really good example during the time. I think is a small thing. And the other thing is circular economy is also related with the time that we have as citizens and institutions. If we don't have time, we tend to make more waste. Like if we don't have time to cook, we will eat processed foods. So we make waste because of the packaging, and we go to takeaways. So all of this, sometimes we look just for the environmental problem or this kind of perspective, but we need to look as the social thing as well. So things like reducing the work week load can help a lot circular economy. If people have more time to be to cook, to repair, things will happen. But if we don't have time, I just go to the shop and buy something because I need to solve my needs at that time. So these two things as a systemic way that maybe we need to look at. Thank you.
Thanks, Cátia. I think that's a very interesting perspective to bring in. So, and I think that I could see the heads nodding, and I would assume also from the audience, this is a very interesting also turnaround. It's not only technical issues, it's supporting the upscaling and also looking into the very strongly social dimension. Cosima, would you like to share some closing words with our audience and our other guests from this evening?
Yeah, I'll pick it up from where Cátia ended. I think it's interesting, and I would connect what you were saying, Cátia, with a comment from Giovanni Pagano about the fact that in rural areas these circular practices are already happening, and maybe they're just undervalued. And it is something that you probably all heard. The fact that in cities we're trying to go back to the rural. We're trying to go back to nature. COVID, was a huge factor in this. We suddenly realized, oh damn, like I live in a 30-meter square apartment in Paris where there's no nature around me. What am I going to do? I'm going to move to the countryside. So I do agree that I think maybe sometimes we often think that cities are the center of innovation, but I think sometimes you should do a reverse knowledge exchange. Try to learn from the countryside and go back to repairing, to go back to slow practices. So I'm going to end it on that. I don't have any other comment.
Thank you, Cosima. So slow practices and also not being always urban-centric, which I think that's a very good message to share with us. Janneke, I believe that there was some interesting input coming also from you, and I think it was very interesting for our panelists and our guests to have also the insights from you and the work of the Commission. Would you like to share some closing words from your side?
Well, I think I already gave all the information I wanted to share, and again, I also want to thank the other panelists because. Well, it was very interesting to hear what everybody around Europe is doing. And I again want to stress, keep an eye out on Horizon Europe, the work program that will come out. And I also really hope that maybe some of you who are listening or some of the people on the panel will try and submit an expression of interest to become one of the pilot projects in the CCRI scheme. So thank you.
Very well. So for everybody, please keep an eye on the Horizon Europe. And for the expression of interest, Janneke, where should people look at?
Well, what I will be doing is I'll be reaching out to you as well, and we will be reaching out to all kinds of networks to spread the message on. And now one of my kids is walking in.
And it's fair enough because it's closing time, so they're absolutely right. It's the right time.
We will be promoting extensively as soon as the expression of interest is ready. Yeah. So okay, thanks for that.
Your kids are very welcome to join in and say hello.
Yeah, they're very hungry. They made a present. Yeah.
And they made an absolute
for the circular
point.
Economy. No.
Exactly. But they absolutely made a point because this is the end of our session today. So we would like to give a very big thank you to all our panelists, to our audience. I would like, from my side, to thank all the Eutropian and the EUKN partner colleagues, because they have made it possible to organize the session of today. And last but not least, I would like to thank my co-moderator, Lily. It was a lot of fun to organize and moderate this together. But this is not the last. This is only the first of a series of episodes, and we will meet next month, early June. Stay tuned for further information, talking about placemaking. Lily, would you like to share a couple of words about that?
Yes, thanks, Danny. I'd also like to reiterate that it's been great to collaborate with all of you. Thank you for attending today. And like Danny said, this is only the first of a whole series of webinars that we're doing. We will be having a second Cooperative Urban Futures episode on June 1st. And it's about transforming cities from the ground up, placemaking for more sustainable cities. So we're going to be stimulating a discussion about the role of tactical urbanism and experimental placemaking in street level urban transitions. And we're going to take a little look at the enablers and barriers that allow or prevent such initiatives from becoming permanent and becoming sort of systemic. And of course, we'll have some reflection on the impact of the pandemic, because that's been a pretty big deal over the last year. So keep an eye out for some more information about that coming your way soon, and make sure to sign up.
Thank you all. It was a fantastic session, a lot of food for thought, and we'll stay in contact very soon. Have a fantastic dinner and stay safe. Bye.